sarve bhavantu sukhinaha sarve santu niramaya sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukha bhavet. May all be happy, may all be free from disease, may all see only goodness everywhere. May no one suffer from any misery. Om, peace, peace, peace. This is a prayer from the Vedas, the Hindu scriptures. Now that I have chanted this peace invocation, I should announce the subject on which I will give my talk this evening. This is the season in India when God is worshipped as the Divine Mother. That's why I chose the subject, sources of the name Durga. Durga is the Divine Mother. According to Hinduism, the highest concept of God is that God is beyond time, space and causation. That God is infinity, eternity and formlessness and consciousness. Formless. So how can we say that God is mother or God is father? Well, let me explain. Seattle is famous for its grey sky most of the year, and I am in Seattle. And if some people with colored eyeglasses are looking at the grey sky, and those who have red colored eyeglasses, they will see that grey sky as a reddish. And another person who has green colored glasses, and through those glasses that person will see that grey sky as green. The same sky will appear to be red or green or whatever. Is the sky changing its color? No. These colors are being projected by the colored eyeglasses. Every human mind is like a pair of colored eyeglasses. Not two minds are alike. That's why human beings, when they try to think of that divinity, which is beyond time, space and causation, which is infinity, eternity, and only source of consciousness, they cannot conceive of that. So that's why their minds project limitations on that divinity. Therefore, to some, that divinity without any personality becomes a person. Personality is a limitation which is projected by human minds on God. To some, God acquires the personality of a father. To some, God acquires the personality of a mother, and so on. But whether one looks upon God as father, mother, or friend, or child, no matter how they may think of God, but God is the one and only reality. That's what the scriptures of Hinduism teach us. Ekam sad vipra bahuda vadanti. There is only one divinity, but the sages call the same divinity by different names. That's why that impersonal divinity becomes the mother, the divine mother. Human beings try to think of God as mother or some. And not just one form of mother, but many different forms of mother. The idea of God as mother is very ancient. In India, there is a place which is called Mohenjo-daro, and another place Harappa. There were some, it looks like some buildings were there underground, and they were able to dig out some of those buildings, and they found certain things. And those buildings were built about 5,000 years ago. And then in some of those buildings, they found the image of the Divine Mother. So the idea of Divine Mother is about 5,000 years old. And about Divine Mother, so many stories are there. Because in Hinduism, certain spiritual truths are presented through stories so that ordinary people can grasp those truths. There are stories in India called Panchatantra stories, and also another set of stories called Hitapodesha stories. There is the characters, some of the characters are animals, but they're talking in human tongue. And eventually, every story has a moral to teach. So, many of the spiritual teachings that were given in India, they were given through stories. So Sri Ramakrishna, the divine incarnation of this age, used to say, scriptures are like sugar mixed with sand. Like sugar mixed with sand. One has to reject sand and eat sugar. That's why, let me take the example of that epic, the Ramayana it is called. It is based on the life of the divine incarnation Rama. And it is quite old. And the Ramayana is not the history of Rama, actually. Certain truths have been taught through that book. In that book, there is a character called Hanuman. Hanuman was a Vanara. In those days, some people used to think that they are the real human beings, others are not quite human beings. Nara means human being. They are not quite human beings, they are Vanara. Here in the United States of America, there are some American Indian tribes. They used to think that they were the only human beings and others were subhuman beings. So also was China. In ancient China, people used to think that the foreigners were subhuman beings. And they were the only human beings. Similar thought might have prevailed in India also. So Hanuman was a Vanara. And he was a great devotee of the divine incarnation Rama. And in order to get some medicine, there was a war between Ravana and Rama, and so some allies of Rama were injured, and then Hanuman heard from Rama that there is a mountain, on that mountain there is some herb which could help these people to be all right physically, those injured people. And so Hanuman then went there. How did he go? He flew through the air. There were no airplanes at that time. He flew through the air and arrived at the mountain. The mountain was sort of conical in shape, and on that mountain, on the top, that particular herb was available. So Hanuman broke the tip of that mountain with that herb in it, and put it in his armpit and came back to Lord Rama. That is the story. So there are some literalists who think that actually that happened. But no. Even a divine incarnation like Ramakrishna, he was not a literalist. He speak the truth. So he said, scriptures are like sugar mixed with sand. You have to reject sand and eat the sugar. The Bhagavad Gita is a very famous scripture of Hinduism. Here it is said that all the teachings which are there in the major scriptures which are called the Vedas, those teachings are all contained in the Bhagavad Gita. It has 18 chapters. It is presented as a dialogue between Krishna, the divine incarnation, and his student, a Prince Arjuna. So, Sri Ramakrishna said, this book, Bhagavad Gita, is a good scripture, no doubt, but what does it teach? You reverse the word Gita, then it becomes Tagi. That's what the Gita teaches. You don't have to go through the entire book. And Tagi is a word which is a Sanskrit word, and it comes from the verbal root tog. From tog, the word Tagi means renouncer. That means it teaches that we have to renounce anything that is an obstacle to the realization of our inherent divinity. So that's what Gita teaches, Sri Ramakrishna says. Just by one word, the teaching of the Gita can be expressed. That is Tagi. And this idea of the Divine Mother Durga is talking about it, and it is present in the Rig Veda also, which is the most ancient scripture, so to say, of Hinduism. And there, see, the Divine Mother has been mentioned as Vishwa Durga, Sindhu Durga, Agni Durga. These three names we find. But the Hindus today they performed the worship of the Divine Mother Durga in the autumn. It is called autumnal worship of the Divine Mother Durga. And who worshipped it? According to them, this Lord Rama worshipped. But truly speaking, the original Ramayana written by sage Valmiki, that does not mention such worship. But later on, other versions of the Ramayana came up. One version was in Bengali language, and the person who wrote that, his name was Krittivasa. In his Ramayana, you read about the autumnal worship of the Divine Mother Durga. Truly speaking, he might have got this idea from another book called Devi Bhagavatam. There, the Divine Mother Durga has been mentioned. Now let me come to the point. The point is, what are the sources of the name Durga? According to the story, this was presented to the Hindus through a story, and a religious story, of course, scriptures, that there was a king named Janamejaya. Janamejaya wanted to know about the Divine Mother Shatakshi Devi from the sage Vyasa. Vyasa said that Shatakshi Devi was that Divine Mother who killed an Asura named Durgama. Asura named Durgama. Therefore, the Divine Mothers acquired the name Durga. That's what sage Vyasa said to King Janamejaya. What is a Sura and what is an Asura? Sura is a person whose body shines, and Asura is one whose body does not shine that much. Asura. But this word Asura has been mentioned in the Hindu scriptures, even including the Rig Veda, many times, meaning different things. Asura does not mean something whose body is not shiny or something. Asura sometimes means God also. And some Indo-Aryans who were Hindus, they went to present-day Iran, and there one of them became a great saint. His name was Zarathustra. So Zarathustra taught those who would come to him about God. And then he would talk about Ahura Mazda and Ahura Man. Ahura Man is two gods. One is a good god, the other one is a bad god. They would pronounce the word Sura, they could not pronounce Hura, they would say. Ahura Mazda. Mazda is the good god, and then is Asura Mazda is a good god, and Asura Man is a bad god. So that word Asura. But eventually that word Asura started meaning something bad. But so far as the story which I am going to tell you, that Asura, whose name was Durgama, was not a bad person. He was also a king, and he had his army, vast army in palace and everything. But for some reason, this Durgama wanted to defeat the Suras or gods. These Suras are human beings, but for some reason Durgama wanted to defeat the Suras. And he knew that the strength of the Suras came from the brown butter that is offered as oblation during the Homa sacrifice by people. So, Durgama then meditated on Brahma. Brahma is one of the name of divinity. Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara. So God. Durgama then meditated on God Brahma for how many days? This is a story. For 1,000 years. That is for a long time. And he got the boon from Brahma that all the Vedic mantras will be under Durgama's control. Because the people who follow the Vedas and they perform the worship of God using fire as the symbol, and into that fire they put brown butter and all these things, thinking that that butter would go to gods. That's why Durgama, who didn't like the gods, got the boon from Brahma that all the Vedic mantras will be under Durgama's control, and Durgama stopped the performance of that fire worship called Homa. And as a result of that, all the gods or Suras lost their power and were defeated by Durgama one by one. And the deity or God who was responsible for rain and all that, that deity also lost his power, and that's why there was no rain fall for many years. How many years? It is a story. It's 100 years according to the story. For 100 years there was no rain, so all the lakes became dry and vegetation was gone. People were starving. That was the condition of this earth at that time. Then the Brahmin priests, they could not use the Vedic mantras to perform the worship of God as fire, in the form of fire. So they thought that they would have to do something about it. So all those Brahmin priests, Brahmins means they were the worshippers, they went to the mountain, Himalayas mountain, and prayed to the Divine Mother Shatakshi. And the Divine Mother was called Shatakshi because she had 100 eyes. Shata means one and Akshi, that is, she has 100 eyes. And the Divine Mother was pleased with that prayer of the Brahmin priests, and then she started shedding tears of compassion. And all those tears came down as rain. And then it rained for 9 days. Mother's eyes, Divine Mother's Shatakshi's eyes went on shedding tears for 9 days. And then gradually vegetation came back. The world became habitable. And seeing that, Durgama, with his great large army, attacked the priests and the deities or Suras with his vast army. Then the Suras prayed to the Divine Mother, and the Divine Mother, and they were all defeated by Durgama's army. And then, according to their prayer, the Divine Mother Shatakshi sends innumerable female deities to fight with Durgama's army. And they destroyed Durgama's army completely. And Durgama then came and defeated the female deities. At last, Shatakshi, Divine Mother Shatakshi came there. And she, with her weapons, arrows, etc., killed Durgama. And then a strange thing happened. From the dead body of Durgama, a strange outburst of energy came and entered into the body of Divine Mother Shatakshi. And as Durgama body entered into the Divine Mother, or that spirit entered into the Divine Mother Shatakshi, she came to be known as Durga, from the name of Durgama, Durga, Divine Mother Durga. This is the story. Those who are devotees of Mother Durga and they worship Mother Durga, if they hear this story, I don't know whether they will be happy or not, but it is there in our scriptures. And even Mother Durga has 10 arms. Each arm represents her power. And according to some, the Divine Mother Durga has 100 arms. Each arm represents a power of the Divine Mother. So if you see that image which is made with clay and all and painted nicely, they're made to look like a female deity, but with 100 arms or 10 arms. They know that each arm represents a power of the mother. With one arm she is destroying those who are wicked, another arm she is saving, giving the idea of fearlessness in the minds of those who are good, and so on and so forth. She is the giver. She is everything. That's why the entire world is represented by her. The entire world exists in her. Well, this is a story. And the source of the name Durga is mainly from the name of that asura named Durgama. Well, I hope I have done justice to the title of my talk. The title of my talk is Sources of the Name Durga. Thank you very much for your patience. You patiently listened to my talk. Thank you.